Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm Sherry Duckworth, and joining me today is Mr. David Timothy, also known as the SoupMan, and Mr. Lon Ricker, the director and developer for the SoupMobile. Thank you both so much for coming back and talking with us today here at Joy in Our Town.
It's our pleasure, Sherry.
It's good to have you back, and we always like to educate the public and to talk with people about the homelessness situation here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And just to kind of get us going, if you can give us a brief description of how the SoupMobile has really started to, you have been for a while now,
yes.
Help the homeless in our community.
Well, Sherry, the SoupMobile, it all starts with our mission statement. And our mission statement is 3 simple words spoken by a man called Jesus more than 2,000 years ago when he said, "Feed my sheep." And that's our mission statement. And so we feed his sheep in 3 separate, distinct ways, but we think when he said that, he meant more than just food. He meant love and caring and compassion and shelter. So we feed the homeless literally more than 200,000 meals a year.
Wow.
We also shelter the homeless, and then we do something for them at Christmas that's pretty magical too. So it's all about feeding his sheep.
It's all about feeding the sheep. I like that. It's a great way of putting it, and it really is a lot broader than what it sounds like. And I think that it's good for people to know that what the needs are of the homeless. There are a lot of stereotypes out there, and there's a lot of people who don't understand why some of these folks have ended up in the position that they're in. So I'd really like for today for us to kind of talk a little bit about that. Why are certain people homeless, and how did they end up there, and why are they still there, and how can we give them hope to get out of it?
Yes. In the Dallas area alone, there's more than 10,000 homeless. These are men, women, and children. Entire families are homeless. And some people think, well, how could that be 10,000? I don't see 10,000 out there, but they're out there, but they're spread out over all of Dallas, sometimes under bridges and abandoned buildings. Some are staying in shelters, but there's a lot of them out there. And how do they get into homelessness? Sometimes it's through events that are beyond their control. Sometimes it's they lost their job, and maybe they were foreclosed on or lost their apartment, and before they knew it, they were out on the streets. So sometimes it's simply something that was beyond their control, but other times it was almost self-induced pain. Sometimes it's addictions. Sometimes it's just bad decision making. But for whatever reason, there's a lot of homeless out there, and they desperately need our help. And that's the goal of the SoupMobile, to reach out to these people and to try to pull them in from the cold and get them out of homelessness.
Yes. Now, with such a broad group of people, so many of them, how are you able to meet basic needs like feeding the homeless? What are ways just to make sure that they're getting a hot meal?
Yeah, the key, it all starts with food. Just like all of us every day, we get up, we've got to have nourishment. So the SoupMobile, one of the keys to what we do is we're a mobile soup kitchen. So we literally cook up the hot food every day in our kitchens and load it into our mobile vans, and then we go out to where the homeless congregate and we feed them. A typical afternoon at lunchtime, we'll serve more than 600 hot, hearty, and healthy meals. But of course, it's more than about just the food. Along with every dish of food that we pass out that love of Jesus, because they need both. They need the food nourishment, but they need the love of Jesus too, of course.
Love and food is something that everyone needs, and to be able to provide that for the homeless is a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to do for them. And I'm sure that many of them probably this could be their only hot meal that they see every day. With other organizations also being out in the Metroplex, for them to be able to go to other shelters, for example, for them to be able to go to get meals, how come sometimes it seems as if many homeless, or the assumption is many homeless don't want the help or don't want to reach out, they rather do it for themselves?
Excellent question, Sherry. Some people think the homeless are lazy. And I hear a lot. Some people say, well, I've got a job, why don't they get a job? But it's a lot more complicated than that, because if you're homeless and you're able-bodied, and even if you want to work, and most of them do want to work, but even if you want to work, it's hard to get a job, because if you go into that employer and you start filling out the application, and it's asking for where you live, and you have to fill in, well, I live in a cardboard box under a bridge, and it asks for a phone number, and you don't have a phone. And then you have another equally qualified applicant for the same job that has a house and a phone. You can imagine who's going to get the job. It's going to be the person that's not homeless. So even if you're homeless and want a job, and again, most of them do, it's very difficult to compete in the job market.
I'm sure. Now, you had mentioned earlier that there are people who, have families that are homeless. But then you have those who are single, maybe they had their home foreclosed on or they lost their apartment. So you have all of these broad needs, these varying needs to contend with in the Metroplex area, meeting the needs of all of these homeless and the different faces of the homeless. How can this be done in our community? How can organizations as yourselves really reach out to all these different needs and be able to try and help meet them where they're at?
Okay, so you're right on target here. Feeding the homeless is important, of course, but it's got to go beyond that. You're right. And so the SoupMobile does something called SoupMobile Village. And this is our shelter program. We literally take homeless men, women, children, entire families in off the street into our housing program called SoupMobile Village. And the village is just a series of group homes that we have here in the Dallas area. And each home is specifically designed to take this homeless man, woman, or family right off the streets, put a roof over their head, help them get back on their feet, and eventually return them as working, productive members of the community. And the key, Sherry, it's a hand up. It's not a handout. So food is important, but sheltering is equally as important for these homeless people.
Now, another question that you might hear often is, if there are so many great organizations as yourselves and others, and there's other shelters as well in the Metroplex, why do we still see some homeless choosing to not participate in shelters or in your village, for example? Why do they choose to go ahead and sleep on the street instead?
Okay, so a lot of the homeless here in Dallas will want to stay out in the cold. And the reason is that some of the shelters that are set up for them are what are called bed for a night shelters, where you go in for the night and you stay in the shelter, but then you have to go out early the next morning. And we support these kind of shelters. We think they're important, an important part of getting people off the streets. But if you're living under a bridge and you're living in a cardboard box, that's your home. That's where you have all your stuff. And to go into that shelter every night and then go back in the morning, back to your home, it really kind of is confusing for some of these homeless people. So even though it sounds odd, sometimes that cardboard box under a bridge that becomes your little home, that's where you want to stay. But the bigger problem than that is there's not enough room at the inn. We've got too many homeless and not enough shelter beds every night. So even if all the homeless wanted to come in every single night to a shelter here in Dallas, there's simply not enough room at the inn. There's just too many homeless out there.
Is it a difficult task in hearing that to encourage some of the homeless to come and get shelter, obviously, because they don't want to leave their belongings behind? They wouldn't want to leave their home. It's like we don't want to leave ours.
Yes.
It's a strange thought, like you said, that this box has become somebody's home, the place where they're comfortable. But how can you encourage them to go, hey, this is probably better for you if we can get you inside?
Okay, so it's all about trust. One of the gentlemen that's in our housing program right now, he had been homeless for 15 years, living in one of those cardboard boxes under a bridge in South Dallas. So when we first met him, we tried to get him to come in from the cold, but we found out it takes a while to build some trust. So after feeding this gentleman for quite some period of time, getting to know him and him getting to know us, we started to build that trust. And then there came a point where we said to him, you know what? We've got a shelter program. You know us, we know you. Come on in from the cold into our shelter program. He said yes. He came into our program, and now he's one of the maintenance managers at SoupMobile Village. Wow. So not only is he not homeless anymore, he's employed, and he's a working, active, productive member of the community.
So building that trust with that homeless person is key. So if you're going to be out there helping in the community, building that trust with them in order to get them through the door, in order to give them that hand up so that they can also be employed. It starts with them trusting, obviously.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of great charities in Dallas and a lot of fine service providers. But the key to everything that we do and all these other charities do is you do have to build this trust with these people because, you know, they're out there in the cold and that can be pretty scary out there. And even if you're offering them something that can be pretty good for them, and we think it is, still, you've got to build that trust first before they are going to come in from the cold.
Because 15 years homeless, I mean, that's somebody we consider chronically homeless.
Yes.
And now he's not. So there is hope, and they can change their mind, and some do. And so it's great to hear success stories like that, especially in our Metroplex, to know that, you know, this gentleman has been able to, you know, get out from underneath the bridge and to get a job, and it's just very encouraging to hear that.
Yes, and for us, it just speaks of the redemptive power of Jesus. 15 years homeless, that's to pull this man out is reaching deep into the heart of this homeless community, and for him to make this transition into what we would call as a regular life is just amazing. And we give all the credit to that to this guy called Jesus. He's the one that made it possible.
Well, I think it's a beautiful thing, and it shows definitely a difference between, you know, definitely the difference that a trust and love and kindness can really make in somebody's life. So I think what you all do is wonderful. And now, you all have another service you provide to the community, the homeless community as well, and you do this once a year. And you know, a lot of times during the holiday season is when people think about the homeless. Unfortunately, we don't always think about the homeless all year long, but usually around Christmas time is a time where folks go, you know, we want to give back to the community. What can we do? And so it's good to know that there are organizations out there where we can participate. So tell us a little bit about what is available to give to the homeless community during the special season.
Okay, so Sherry, every year at Christmas, the SoupMobile does something totally magical. This is going to be our 8th year, and I brought with me today Lon Ricker. He's the Director of Development at the SoupMobile, which means he's our big fundraiser. But his really important job is he is the chairman of our Christmas event, and I'm not going to give it all away. I'm going to let Lon talk about it. So Lon, would you tell Sherry about the Christmas event?
Thank you for having us, Sherry. As David said, every year we do something magical. It's called Celebrate Jesus. We take 500 homeless men, women, and children right off the streets of Dallas, and we put them up at a big, fancy, luxurious hotel in downtown Dallas. They all get new clothes and gifts and food and lots of love. We have over 2,000 volunteers that come help us with this event. The most important thing, Sherry, is when they wake up on Christmas morning, it's in a safe, warm bed at a nice, fancy hotel. It's not in that cardboard box underneath the bridge someplace.
I think that's such a beautiful thing, and the fact that you know, the community is able to be involved in that and to give to the homeless community in this way is a beautiful thing. For people who would like more information on the SoupMobile and the Christmas event, where can they go visit?
Well, our website is soupmobile.org. And on November 1st every year, we open up all the volunteer opportunities so they can go right to our website and they can volunteer to come cheer, to help serve at the big banquet. There's lots of opportunities for them to come help us.
Excellent. Well, Lon, thank you for being here and telling us about the event. And David, of course, it's always a pleasure to have you all both here. So thank you both for coming and talking with us, and for the SoupMobile for what you do for the community.
Thank you, Sherry.
And thank you all for watching Joy in Our Town today.